This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Baruchim haba and welcome everyone to a special edition of All Parsha on Parshas Vayeishev, the Ben La'ashri, the holy tzaddik of Ranana, on Parshas Vayeishev. This year, we'd like to examine 4 amazing pieces of the Ben La'ashri, and by way of introduction, I want to share with you 2 pieces perhaps we've shared in the past. The opening words of the Parsha, Vayeishev, Yaakov, Be'eretz, Megure, Rashi Tevos, Yibum. Well, Yibum is a very significant feature of the Parsha. After all, we know that Yehuda was Meyabim, his daughter-in-law, and through that union produced Zarach and Paretz, and that produced the seeds of the Malchus Beis David. And even though it's said, you would think that this is a tzara for Yaakov Avinu, and that his 2 grandchildren should die, the next pasuk says Elah, and it says no, that's not really a tzara, because ultimately this will build the family of the Malchus Beis David. But amazingly, the Rashi Tevos Vayeishev Yaakov Be'eretz Megure is Rashi Tevos Yibum. We continue on. Vayeishev Yaakov Be'eretz Megure Avav Be'eretz Kinaan Soifei Tevos. Gematria 250 Ner. That's because every time we finish laning Vayeishev, we light Nerois Chanukah. Okay. Vayeishev Yaakov Be'eretz. Let's talk about the difference between Yaakov's relationship with Eretz, with Artzios, with physicality, and Esav's relationship with Eretz. By Yaakov, Vayeishev Yaakov Be'eretz. When it comes to Eretz, Yaakov has to think about it. He has to be miyashiv datoi. He has to deal with it, that he doesn't become immersed in Gashmias. By Esav, Vayelach el Eretz. He goes headlong into it. Halicha, the definition of a person is halicha, going. Esav is identified. He immerses himself into the artzios, into the physicality, roishai v'gufai. Ve'aviv shamaras hadavar. Ve'aviv shamaras hadavar is gematria im hakoilel oisher Torah halacha. The good fortune of Torah and halacha. This could be explained based on the Gemara in Yuma on Daf Chavav Amud Aleph, where the Gemara says that we don't find young Torah scholars that paskin only from Shevet Yisachar or from Levi. The Marsha asks, what about David HaMelech? It says, Hashem imai v'Hashem imai halacha k'maisa b'chal makom. And the answer he gives is, as a king is different. Melech shani. So when Yaakov saw that Yosef was a melech, he rejoiced. Now he has the oisher, the wealth of Torah. What part of Torah? Halacha. Now perhaps the halacha could be like Yosef. Vayomer aleihem Reuven. Reuven says to them, Al tishbechu dam. Do not spill blood. Hashlichu oisai el habar hazeh. Throw him into this pit. Leman hatzil oisa miyadam. He did this in order to save Yosef. Lahashivei el aviv. And then, of course, the pasuk says, V'habar reikei maimayim. The pit was empty. There was no water in it, but there were snakes and scorpions. Says the Medrash, if Reuven would have known that the Torah would write about him that he saved his brother, Reuven would have done so with great pomp and ceremony. He would have carried him back to his father on his head. Question, asked the Ben La'ashri, did Reuven do this mitzvah for glory? That he would have done it with more enthusiasm had he known the Torah would report it about him? Ben La'ashri says an amazing approach. What was Reuven thinking, throwing him into a pit of snakes and scorpions? The halacha is that if someone falls into a pit of snakes and scorpions, you could testify that they die, that they're dead. Because certainly the person will be harmed. Says the Ben La'ashri, that's by a regular, simple person. But by a tzaddik, the pasuk says, Al shachal vafesen tidroich. They could stomp on the jackal, on the snake. Tirmois kefir v'sanin. They could trample the serpent. So Reuven, in fact, as the Al-Shach says, was masupik. He didn't know whether Yosef was a tzaddik or maybe Yosef was a rasha, like the brothers were saying. So he figured, I have a great test. we'll put him by the snakes and scorpions. If he is harmed, then he was a Rasha. If he's not harmed, then obviously he was a tzaddik. Now we understand the Medrash. If Reuven would have known that the Torah would write that he saved him, that means ultimately Yosef was not harmed, then of course Reuven would have ran him back to his father. He wouldn't have needed the snake pit test, but he would have known from before that Yosef was a tzaddik, and he would have brought him directly back to his father. And finally, the final offering. Vayikachu vayashlichu esei habayrav habarek ein boi mayim. Says the Ben La'ashri, the word vayikachuhu, and he took him, is extra. Just say he threw him into the pit, and obviously he first took him to throw him into the pit. Says the Ben La'ashri, based on Rashi, on the Parsha kaches aharon, which means take him with words. Taking, kicha is a lashon of pios, of persuading, that the brothers judged Yosef like a roidef, that Yosef wanted to kill them. And Yosef said, no, I'm not trying to harm you, I love you, I'm just trying to fulfill my dreams. Therefore the brothers presented to Yosef the following barometer. They said, look, as much as we want to prove that you're innocent, I'm sure you want to prove that you're innocent, so we have a great idea, and I think you should go along with it. Namely, we hold you're a Baal Lashon Hara. You were Vayava Yosef Esdi Basamra. The snake was the first Baal Lashon Hara. So if you're a Baal Lashon Hara, you'll be harmed by the snake. If you're not, you won't be harmed. And this way, you'll be able to prove your innocence. So they persuaded Yosef to allow them to throw him into the pit. Vayikachu, they persuaded him. And they threw him into the pit. And the pit was empty, meaning they persuaded him to throw him into a pit that was empty from water but had snakes, so this way it would be able to prove his innocence if he in fact was not a Baal Lashon Hara. So these are some amazing thoughts of the Ben La'ashri on Parshas, Vayeishev, wishing everyone a wonderful rest of the week. Shabbos, Mevarchim Chodesh, Teves Haba Alinu Latayva.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.